They knew that false witnesses were called to testify against him. They knew that he had violated no civil laws. They knew that he was tried for the religious convictions of his conscience. They knew that he was called before a religious tribunal, much like the Sanhedrin at first. He knew that that religious tribunal had pronounced a death sentence against him. And they knew that then they took him to the emperor, to have the emperor stamp his imprimatur upon the sentence of death. And they knew that because of his religious convictions, he was burned at the stake. They knew the history of the church in the Middle Ages when church and state are united or joined together. I'd like to read you a few statements from this very interesting book that I have. It's called Huss the Heretic. It's written by an individual called Poggius the Papist. In fact, this is the man who was sent to arrest John Huss. And actually, as he watched the way that John Huss was treated by the Roman Catholic Church, he actually came to sympathize with John Huss as against the church that he represented. Let me read about the conditions that John Huss was in because of the convictions of his conscience during the Middle Ages. This is on page 19 of this book. After a short while, Huss was let out of his dungeon into a decent chamber, but his feet almost refused to carry him. He swayed as he walked. Listless and unused to the day was the light of his eyes, deathly pale his cheeks, and loose what was left of his teeth, since 11 had fallen out due to the damp prison. The nails on his fingers were terribly long because he had been unable to bite them off for many weeks. Upon his skin was a crust of dirt which exuded an awful stench, and his otherwise brown hair fell in white ringlets upon his rotting and torn garb. This is an individual who belongs to the Roman Catholic papacy describing this. His shoes had rotted upon his feet, and his shirt and loincloth had vanished. The rounded flesh which had covered his bones had shrunken and shriveled, and he had become a picture of woe without equal, unrecognizable to those who had known him before. Horror filled those who looked upon him, and pitying people prepared a bath for him, brought shirts and clothing, and refreshed him with strengthening foods, for which he could only thank with tearful eyes. On page 28, we find this statement: with the clock striking 8 and the bells telling, the procession of bishops, cardinals, and fathers. See, they're taking him to his trial now, to his religious trial. Notice who he's appearing before. The procession of bishops, cardinals, and fathers, and deputies moved toward the church, where a chair had been placed for Huss, about which the seats of the gentlemen were arranged. He was brought there for the convictions of his conscience. He had violated absolutely no civil laws. In fact, when they gave him an opportunity to speak,